Some tips for Facebook. First off, it's important to realize that your followers won't see all of your posts. In fact, most of your followers won't see each of your posts unless there's a ton of engagement early on. With the amount of content that gets shared on Facebook, think of the number of people that post a picture of what they had for lunch every day or what they made for dinner. You know, that's a big yawn. Facebook can't put on everybody's timeline every post that every one of their 400 or so friends put out that day, because they never surface any of the good stuff, right? They're just this giant feed of worthless stuff. So what Facebook does is for each new post, anybody, whether it's a business or a person, for each new post you put out there, what Facebook's going to do is show that to this little slice of your followers. And maybe it's 10% or 20 people or something like that. It's probably, and then Facebook doesn't tell us how to do this, but it's probably a group of people that tend to interact with your post the most. And then Facebook is going to let that cook for a little bit, maybe an hour or 2, 3 hours. And if there seems to be some engagement being people liking it, people sharing, people commenting, things like that, then they'll show it to that next layer of 5 or 10% of your followers and see how they engage with it. And they'll roll this out over a week, week and a half. You'll find that an article you published on Monday gets a flurry of reshares 8, 9, 10 days later. And it's not because those people weren't on Facebook for a week. It's because it didn't show up in their feed because they're in layer 8 or 9 or 10 of this kind of onion of followers. And Facebook is not going to share it to the next layer out until they're sure that it's still getting some engagement interaction. So early engagement with each post is key. If you've got a story that you think is really likely to be hot and you expect it to be shared a lot and you want to get it out there, do a paid boost on it as soon as you publish it to make sure it gets in front of a whole bunch of people. And that's fairly inexpensive. So let's say, so here in Bend, when I'm doing paid boosts for my Rotary Club's events, I can boost it for $100 to 8,000 to 15,000 people. That's a pretty big boost for $100. And now, do you really need to show that many people to start getting the some sharing going and trigger those signals with Facebook? No. Maybe if you boost it for $20 and you'll get it in front of 2,000, 3,000 people, maybe 30 or 40 will reshare it. That's enough to show Facebook a real strong signal that there's something going on and something popular about that. And then Facebook will then show it to that next range of followers that you don't have to pay for, and the next range and the next range. So big popular news stories, ones you really want to get out there in front of people, give them a little bit of paid boost on Facebook. Also, you may want to tweak the headline description to make it more shareable on Facebook. What fits on the screen on desktop for your article might wrap strangely or get truncated in Facebook or whatever. So have a look and see how the headline shows on Facebook, and you might have to tweak it, make it slightly different from how it reads in the story itself on your site. So what controls the appearance on Facebook? Well, if somebody just takes a link to a page on your site and they flip over to Facebook and they paste that link, Facebook looks at something called open graph tags. If you actually look in the code for the page, you'll see OG:image, OG:title, OG:description, things like that. Facebook looks at those tags, and by default, that's what they're going to use to come up with the picture they share and the title they use and the snippet they show and that sort of stuff. The mistake some people make is they'll have their open graph image set to their logo for every page on their site. So somebody gets a story about a department store that caught on fire. If you want that thing to get shared on Facebook, the image of your logo on the feed is not going to do it. The image of the building on fire, that gets attention, that's going to get shared. So if the open graph tags are done correctly, then what happens is when somebody starts at your website, copies and pastes the link, the right image gets shared because open graph tag will point at whatever the featured image is in that post. Of course, when you post directly to Facebook, you can tweak it, control what image shows, and that's great, and you should do that. But these open graph tags are so that your reader who starts at your website and makes their own post from scratch, not resharing your post, they see this article and copy and paste that link and share that on Facebook, and make sure that what that shows up as uses the title you want, the image you want, things like that. So if you've got a big story you should test your page's visibility by pasting that to Facebook and see what Facebook pulls up for that. And then gives you time to tweak it before it gets shared a whole bunch with the wrong image or whatever happens to be. Last item on this slide here, test your page's visibility. It's possible to set up your privacy for your page on Facebook. Let's say you might think, okay, well, I really don't need this, our newspaper's page visible to anybody outside the state, so I'll set up some geographic restrictions. That seems to make sense, right? But here's what happens. When Googlebot crawls your Facebook page, Googlebot is not logged in. Because it's not logged in, Facebook can't tell what state they're in, what age they are, et cetera, et cetera. And so Facebook won't allow Googlebot to see the content on your page if there's those restrictions. So go to a browser, log out of Facebook, and go to your newspaper's Facebook page and make sure that it shows up. Yes, you'll get a little pop-up that says you ought to log into Facebook to see more, whatever, that's fine. That's what you're looking for. If, on the other hand, you try to view your newspaper's Facebook page not logged in and you get a blank screen that tells you you must log in to see the content, now you got a problem. Go in and look at your Facebook page settings, because Google's not seeing all the stuff that you're sharing on your own page if that's the case.